right? And this happens with these guys all the time, right? Our initiative participants are people who buy and sell speculative prices, right? This is like, there are big players who can do this. There are smaller players that do this. All of this happens on larger time frames and smaller time frames, or retail and institutional participants, right? An initiative person is someone who's going to buy and sell a speculative price. So what do I mean? If you're buying S3 and you're buying S3 when it's just wicking down into S3, but you actually haven't seen it do anything after it went there, that's an initiative position. Right now, you're getting into a position very quickly without a lot of confirmation just because of the speculative price. That is a perfectly reasonable way to trade, by the way, right? But the if you're looking for more confirmation, you're going to lie into the responsive class of participants. Again, both larger institutional versions and retail versions, right? You buy and sell trends or confirmation, right? You get the low. After it makes the low, it makes a new high, it gets a reoffer, you buy the reoffer. This is a responsive position, right? You're responding to finding buyers, right? And then you're making decisions based upon that, right? Larger time frame participants do this, but they do this at significantly larger and more fundamental areas, right? So this is my buddy here that works for Citadel, really great guy. So he's someone who's been giving me a lot of information on this. So, and it's just really important to know your role, because you'll see in some of these big, movements, you'll see how we get the big initiative participant, and then we come back to entice the responsive participants, right? We have people who will buy the break and people who will buy value, right? They'll buy the reoffer. So here we had a moment of imbalance. We exploded, right? Then we came back down to find value right at the middle of that candle, right? And then we offered higher and started buying again, right? And you can even read that in the volume, right? So knowing how you like to play is very important, right? Trying to time these initiative movements is very difficult, right? So, but being able to time it otherwise works pretty well. This is just kind of an example of how on the longer time frame, this is MNQ from actually 2024. I want you to see how this yellow line here is VPOC, and I want you to see how we kind of went to it, accepted value, came up and then came back to it, rejected it and came back up to it, and then tested it again. You can kind of see how important this particular level is. This is value, right? Everything we're doing up and down and around this area, right? But it's all about this. There's an order set at 16,800, or there was at this point, right? There was a large order set that they were negotiating. To do that, you have to buy it, sell into it, buy off of it, sell back through it, buy into it, right? This is a massive institutional movement, right? When they want to get those shares they need or the contracts, right, they have to drop down and flush out people who had bought so they can take those contracts and go back up and fill. Right, that's something that I'm really going to use to do that, and I'm going to try and I'm going to try and break your mind with one of my favorite, things from one of my favorite movies. And that concept is that we go up to find buyers and we go down to find sellers. One of the big things that I think a lot of people get back is they think we're going higher to find sellers and we're going lower to find buyers. And that's not how this works. We already know that they're there. We have an order book, right? We can actually see the physical sellers on the book at any given time. Their orders are there. The question is, do we have the buyers to go buy those orders, right? And in order to do that, we have to go up. Shorts buy. What do I mean? You're going up. What do you mean shorts buy? Shorts entering the market, right? When they go out, they throw market buys into the market, right? So when we go higher, the higher we go, the more shorts we're going to shake out, right? So if we can't get people to sell, then we'll move up and we'll stop out shorts. As we stop out shorts, I wouldn't say liquidity grab. I'd say more like market manipulation. Let's be a little like nicer about it. It's just, if we can't go down, we will go up. right? So, and if we go up and we can't find buyers, we will go back down, right? If we go down and we can't find sellers, we go back up. And that's the way they make the money, right? This is the way market makers move price. This is the way they make the money, right? They use this auction process, right, in order to move prices between large institutional orders, right? The market maker is like a large barge, right? The inventory they carry is what we call the float, right? If the market maker wants the price to go up, they need to add to the float. You get me there? So if the market maker wants to add to the float, that means they want sellers, right? So if the market maker wants sellers, what are they going to do? They're going to move the price down, right? As people stop out of their long positions, they will become sellers, right? They'll throw market level sells into the market. And when you sell at market, guess who gets the option to just keep the orders, right? So you go down, you stop out. They don't have to fill other people's orders with those. They only have to fill them if the order comes in on market, right? There is no, listen here, folks. There is no obligation for a market maker to transact a limit order on some, you know what I'm talking about? You can actually leapfrog limit orders. It happens, okay? If the spread is beyond the order and you have it a limit and you happen to get caught inside the spread, you could have your limit order gapped, basically, and not get filled. It actually used to happen to me quite a while ago, a bit often. I think the technology has gotten a little bit better, but for the most part, because you don't want, imagine if you get leapfrogged and you get a really crappy fill because of it. I mean, I don't want to get in. So if I'm going to get a limit buy, I want it to be on my order, right? But there's no actual thing that says that you have to be filled if you never touch that price, right? So now for the most of the time, if you have an order at that price, you are going to get filled. It's very rare that you get skipped anymore. But I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, like back when I used to trade in 2019, getting skipped was like a regular occurrence. It used to happen all the time. So each one of these phases, as we move through and discover value, and we kind of went through it pretty well, right, in the beginning, is we're going to move through these varied phases, almost in this constant cyclical motion, right? And that's how we work. And all of this actually lines up with the varied major methods that are taught. So this is why I'm talking about it's market theory, right? Because it's the same theory that drives the market, right, that we already have right here before us, right? We have Anna Cooling, we have Ney, we have Wyckoff on one side, we have Dow, Neal, and Ochoa on the other, right? Anna, Ney, and Wyckoff would call it accumulation, distribution, consolidation, testing, and transition, right? Dow, Neal, Ochoa would call it value, balance, excess, imbalance, right? These are all the same things, right? And they all intertwine. This is what makes it the music, music, right? It's the theory. It all comes together. It's like the circle of fifths, right? They just kind of be.
Hello, Market Alchemists, and thank you for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure to watch the next episode. And before doing so, like and subscribe.